Hello everybody and good morning. It is the 27th of October. We are sitting in a car at about 6 a.m. and it's mission time. The third time I'll be attempting to cross Wales in a completely straight line. 42 miles of hell, and obviously this is the fifth mission I've tried overall. Now I won't be doing this alone. I'm being joined by Ben Clark.
Hello.
Who's making his not quite a debut actually on in missioning. Tell us about your Cornwall expedition.
A friend and I crossed Cornwall again. It wasn't a very long line, but a friend and I crossed Cornwall in a straight line. That was a success. So fingers crossed, it's 2 out of 2.
Yeah, we're optimistic for this one. We've done a lot of planning, a lot of training, and we're about 200 yards from the start line. So as you can see, it's pretty dark. So we thought, well, best to start under the cover of darkness to give us the maximum chance of progress. So we'll see you on the mission.
Coming up, I skulk out of some trees. Ben is face down in the grass.
I was face down in the grass.
A sheep has a lie down. And I do a camp pose. But first...
I know it's quite dim light, but hopefully you can see we have just arrived at the start point. And Ben is just about to ascend the first fence.
Well, maybe, we'll see.
We hope. Here he goes. You might notice Ben hasn't got his backpack just yet. He's stashed some supplies at the 2k mark. Let's just call it. We're going to use kilometres on this trip. There's been a bit of a debate about using miles or kilometres. I'm more of a miles fan, but we're going to try and mix and match as we go along. So there we go.
Yeah, our support guy, he's a fan of the kilometres, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Which is fair enough. He's done most of the planning.
So, if you haven't come across my channel before, my name is Marcus Gosling and I teach chess to kids for a living. But in my spare time, I happen to enjoy walking across countries in straight lines, inspired by the YouTuber GeoWizard. Here you can see where we parked up near the start point adjacent to the border. The terrain for day one would be largely open farmland, punctuated by the odd slither of woodland or bracken. We were hoping to make it to around 18 kilometres or roughly 11 miles, and we'd spent a fair bit of time the previous day reaching the summit of a very steep hill where we'd stashed our overnight gear. An ambitious strategy, but I hope the reduced weight in our backpack would allow Ben and I to make quicker progress on day one.
Marcus is about to now try and climb the same fence that I did a minute ago.
Right, now what did you use? Use this, didn't you?
Yeah.
I hope my crown jewels don't get snagged on the border. That is... Oh, that was easy.
The first 45 seconds of the mission had passed without major incident. Before I could get too carried away, I accidentally became too well acquainted with a barbed wire fence.
As you can see, Marcus has just barbed his hand.
I've just literally within about 50 yards of the start, I've got my gloves stuck on a fence. So, this is just a nightmare already. Look, I can't even get this thing off. Seriously.
There we go.
Woohoo! No worries, all good. Now what is that in the distance? Is that a flock of sheep? I think it might be. Now nowadays I know what a sheep is. I know how to interact with one, so in theory this should not be a problem.
If you're wondering why I keep banging on about sheep, here is a flashback to my first ever straight line mission, Wales 1, about 10 minutes into the trip.
I have to go around them. Well, I can't go through that. I'm going to have to go around these sheep. Just to hope I don't get attacked. Sheep don't attack, do they? Surely. Well, we've caused some consternation already among the sheep population. They're all legging it at the sight of two army-clad veterans of the straight line mission ambling towards them in a non-threatening manner. Yeah, hopefully the farmer won't spot these sheep scattering like this. So already we're approaching some woods. Doesn't really look like the kind of wood I want to go in, to be honest. It's a little bit dense. Look at this already. It's not good. Just got to try and get in to start with. Right. I'll update you when we're in there. Oh, I mean, look at this, guys. It's just already very, very tough. Let's see if we can get through here. Well, that might be possible. I can hear the slightly worrying sounds of a stream as well, so we need to navigate that shortly. But first things first, let's get through this.
Not brilliant, but not impossible. It's quite a steep drop between here and the ground.
Yeah, it's not ideal, is it?
You grab my hand there.
Yeah.
And then I'll sort of try and turn myself around on this fence.
Okay. You'll notice Ben's safety goggles taking after the great Marcus Gosling from Wales 1. Not even see the cows. I reckon I might take these off because I'm just not seeing stuff quite as well. A slightly improved model, this one.
Well, they're not coming in very handy so far because I've not got them on.
Ben has descended into the undergrowth here, but seems to have seems to have got through it okay. Now it'll be my turn. We've just got through that initial section, the gate post if you like, and now we've got to descend this valley, which, my God.
Didn't see this on the map, did we, Mark?
No, this was slightly unexpected. You don't really expect to see this kind of thing in woods for some reason, you know. Oh dear. And there's a stream at the bottom as well, so this ain't going to be fun. She wasn't quite as bad as we first thought, luckily. But always famous last words, better not tempt fate. Might be time to make a "we're not out of the woods yet" joke, because we are having to scramble up this bank covered in fern. Probably not for the last time. And brambles, Ben says. So yesterday we spent a lot of time stashing the gear. So the backpacks that I'm wearing at the minute, probably around half the weight that they were in Scotland too. Yeah, so we spent a long time trying to get up this hill to stash our camping gear at about 18 kilometers in, so about 10 miles. But probably well worth it because, you know, every pound, or let's say every kilogram saved here makes us a little bit quicker. So we can try and, this is like a high risk strategy, but we're going to try and pull it off. We hear dogs.
It means people.
Yeah, that's slightly worrying, but we are finally out in the open again, which is what we want. Obviously quite exposed, but it means we can at least make quicker progress.
Just donned my straight lining shades. Sun's getting out.
Oh, he's a cool dude, this guy. Once we reach the brow of the hill, we'll be able to see down into the valley, hopefully, and assess the danger, if there is any. Sunrise now. The open fields are bathed in this kind of wallowing light, but we still have to go in the opposite direction, towards those woods. Ben was just telling me the difference between reeds and rushes, which is?
These are rushes, and reeds are what you get along rivers in Norfolk Broads and various places.
Okay, well that's cleared up. The glasses are off. He means business. We can still hear the sound of dogs.
Right, got to get across here now. Now the reason Marcus is filming is because there's a very high chance I'll fall in.
The safety goggles are on, guys. This is an upgrade on Wales 1.
In our planning meetings, we hadn't even considered that this small patch of woodland would cause us any trouble. Unfortunately, as we pressed deeper, we realised we were much mistaken.
So down here we've got a bit of water and brambles, which are, oh god, this is tricky. Even within the first like mile or so, we have this. So not particularly fun at the moment. What do you think, Ben?
I think that we'll get through it.
Getting buried alive here, pretty much. All the while I've got to keep an eye on the GPS to make sure we're not deviating.
Yeah, that was a bit interesting, wasn't it? So we currently, how far off the ground do you reckon we are?
I hate to imagine, but we've got this slightly slippy logged, but
and it was a minute ago we were both standing on it and it started to sort of, well, I don't know what you want to call it.
give way.
Give way. Yeah. So hopefully it doesn't.
Okay, wish us luck. I think you guys need to see this to believe it, to be honest.
Yeah, so the log that we walked over here on has now snapped and fallen most of the way down into the water, which looks very unpleasant, and we're both hoping we don't have to go in it.
Yeah, Ben is trying to follow the same path that I did. And I'll leave him to it. Bad news, guys. We're about a mile in. I've got a wet foot. Yeah, it's not really what you want at this early stage, but we're struggling through this slowly but surely. And out there, farmyards, hopefully. Don't know how well you guys can see, but it's so disorientating in here that I actually got the GPS line backwards, so we ended up going about 10 meters backwards along the line rather than forwards, so just to show my ignorance.
So here's the readout from the GPS, which shows how close we were keeping to our straight line route. The pink tram lines represent the 25 metre platinum corridor, and the gold tram lines represent the 50 metre gold corridor. As you can see, we started off okay, but the woodland we were currently stuck in had caused us all kinds of trouble, and straight away we lost our shot at platinum run, deviating just over 25 metres to the right of the line. A bit disappointing to be honest, but not entirely unexpected.
Well, we've been in this hellhole woodland for about an hour now and made so little progress. We think we've actually doubled back on ourselves by mistake, but it's just really, really difficult. How are you finding it, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, as Marcus says, it's pretty grueling, and there's a lot of water.
After being held up for a good hour, we finally fought our way through the last of the brambles and fallen trees and emerged into the light.
We made it out.
We have indeed. We're out of this dystopian hellhole, as you say.
This meant we were able to stretch our legs on open terrain.
We're heading sort of in that general direction towards the woodland. We can see some farm vehicles in the distance, but hopefully nothing too serious.
As we paid our tributes to this ex-sheep, on the brow of the next hill we caught sight of another area of woodland, one which we'd visited the previous day to secrete some additional nutritional supplies. On our GPS, this was labelled as small stash, as we had a bigger batch of supplies hidden a further 3 or so miles further down the line.
So we're just progressing through some trees here.
Yeah. Oh, you're filming. I didn't realise.
That's all right. Yeah, he's a newbie. He'll get used to it. Well, we've come to our first bank of heathery bracken. Flashback to Wales 1 there, I think, for me. More steep hills covered in bracken is incessant, and yeah, it's brutal at the moment, really brutal.
Yeah, it's pretty steep, isn't it?
Yeah, it's looking quite treacherous, but we should be able to manage that, we hope. We've had practice yesterday on the stash point climb, so nice little streams across first.
Just to give you an indication of how cold it is, look, you've got frost all on the ground.
Yeah.
As long as we're moving, we're alright though.
Well, slightly in view here from this farm, we can see our stash point in those trees up ahead, so that'll be our next stop. Yeah, the weather's still lovely, but it does rather spotlight us. You know, we're much more visible at the moment, so just hoping that we can get into the trees. A very occasional luxury on a mission like this is actually walking on a road or footpath, so I think we're pretty much on it to make the most of it. Now our first stash is in that little wooded area there, so we're going to pick it up now. Well, there's our small stash as we've put it. There's the overlooking farm, and there's Ben.
And there's a car.
There's a car. Uh-oh. Hide.
On our walk up the hill, you may have noticed a small barn on the right-hand side overlooking a portion of the wood where we'd stashed our supplies. We were forced to duck for cover as this barn, which on initial inspection seemed to be quiet and rarely used, suddenly became a hive of activity.
So we've just escaped the farmer. We can hear some chainsawing now, like something out of a horror movie. And on cue it stopped. Oh. Yep, we need to move out of here quick.
Our straight line route would soon lead us out into the open and in full view, so we decided to wait it out. Conscious that we were already behind schedule, we tiptoed through the edge of the wood for as long as possible before diving out into the open. The slightly concerning thing was that the sound of the chainsaw was getting louder, so we were keen not to linger.
This is quite cool actually, because the line skirts the edge of the forest, which means that we can basically walk along this fence, the edge of the fence, and not through the woods. Although these woods aren't too bad, but the bit back there was pretty treacherous, so Ben's leading the way at the moment. Oh. he twigged it.
Talking to me.
I'll talk to you later, Ben. It's alright. I'll make up for it. This is quite a nice site. Open farmland and flat and dry. This is the kind of terrain we need to make big progress on if we're going to try and get to our stash point before dusk. And we're running behind schedule because of what happened earlier with the pernicious woods. So we're going to get a wiggle on now.
Hello.
Army signals. This is where the minutes on the step machine and on the treadmill are really coming in useful with the marching and yeah, it's all good. I'm quite enjoying it so far, even though we've had a few difficult moments, but this makes up for it. It's a beautiful day, beautiful landscape, look at that. And Ben for company. That doesn't tarnish it in any way. We've just recently passed the point where I failed Wales 1, so this is not the worst straight line mission I've attempted, which is great news. I'm feeling quite good, and we're making good progress over this open land, which has come at a really nice time for us because we were falling behind schedule badly, so we're marching. I was telling Ben, imagine you're running late for a bus, but he just told me that he hasn't been on a bus for 10 years, so yeah, it's quite difficult to bridge that gap between Norfolk Broad's Ben and sheep-fearing Marcus. But we'll manage it over the next 5 days. So as I was moving abruptly through this area of rushes, just after I'd been making light of it, unfortunately I got both my feet wet, which is bad news after like 2 miles, but there's not much we can do, just have to keep on heading in that direction. Immaculate performance from Ben Clark. Now I've got some grass. Grass means high pace.
Having suffered significant delays as a result of the pernicious woodland early on and having to stay out of the clutches of chainsaw-wielding farmers, we knew we had to maximise our pace on any favourable terrain, especially under such clear skies, if we were to reach our ambitious overnight camp spot before dark. At our current rate, it would be really touch and go.
Yeah, I was just saying to Ben, I've noticed how many times in my videos I say, "Oh, what a view!" But actually, what a view! Well, it's the sheep obviously, but then it's beyond that. Bit of a down and up. Hey, you better run. I'll come after you. Oh, look at that one, it's like Usain Bolt. So Ben, you hail from Norfolk. Now you've got a very interesting job, I understand.
Yes, you might say. My job is putting up bird sightings across the country. So I was literally told I was going to be interviewed about 5 seconds before the camera came on. So apologies if I'm atrociously unprepared.
You're 20 years old, Ben. So
yeah.
I understand you've had a very nice range of cars in your 3 years of driving.
I've had a range of cars. I wouldn't describe them as very nice. I've had a couple of old Land Rovers, an old Volvo, Golf. Yeah, a variety of cars, but most of them very cheap.
A lot of fun though, right?
Oh yeah, lots of fun. Definitely.
Obviously unimpressed by my interviewing technique, Ben wandered down this beautiful valley, but then came another rude interruption.
Just as we were making a bit of progress there, we heard the rumble of a quad bike. And suddenly, the quad bike has stopped. So it was a man on a quad bike followed by 2 cyclists. It's going to stay here for a second.
Gives us some motivation.
Yeah. So what we've got ahead of us, potentially, it's quite tricky. But if we can get over that hill, we should be okay. Now just here there's a small track, and we thought we could hear quad bikes earlier. Then what happened, Ben?
Anyway, then we could hear a quad bike engine, and we both thought it was going away, and we were right about to cross the fence. And anyway, it was then became very apparent it was coming, so we sort of both slid down this hill into the bracken and waited it out. But yeah, that was a close one, very, very close one.
Yeah, we're currently hiding. Problem is, every time we have to duck for cover and stop, that kind of effectively wastes time, so we've got to try and, when we can, make progress when the farmers aren't there. Yeah, the farmer appears to be trundling along away from us, along where that tree line is. We're going to make a dash for it. Ben's already on his way.
Having vaulted that slightly tricky uphill barbed wire fence you saw in the previous clip, we thought we'd seen the last of that particular quad bike favouring farmer, but it wasn't long before we had to hit the deck again.
There's the farmer.
It's not particularly evident from these grass-dominated videos, but the two of us were actually stuck halfway up a steep bank with the farmer lurking down below us. But once again, we just about got away with it.
Well, that was close.
So sure we were done there. I don't know about you, Marcus, I was so sure we were done.
You know, I'm not 100% sure they were actually farmers. I think they just could be kids. I know it sounds like, you know, just people just having fun.
Look.
I'm not sure. It's hard to know, but we stealthily avoided them.
Oh,
I
was face down in the grass.
Yeah.
We both dropped.
The bad news is I think we're very much on the verge of platinum. I think we may have gone outside platinum just in our angst.
Sure.
But we'll have to see how it goes.
Although our hopes of a platinum run had been dashed already, we had some cause for optimism, especially in the form of this splendiferous downhill jaunt leading to a road section that for a few hundred yards was absolutely bang on our line. What a bonus.
At the end of that road there is a little forest, or let's call it a wood, and that's where we've made our big stash one, so that will be our next replenishment point.
Of course, we couldn't help but pause for a moment to admire the beautiful Welsh landscape. I then failed to learn from past mistakes by conducting an interview in high winds.
So Ben, tell me about why you got involved in straight line missioning.
Well, for some reason everyone got involved in straight line missioning. I was already a fan of GeoWizard.
Well, I'm sure Ben's response was very thought-provoking. Here's my take anyway.
Sort of surprisingly addictive, isn't it, really? But tough, of course, but gets you out in this kind of terrain. I think that's, you know, that's the best bit about it, really, just having the opportunity to explore. But also, I find like straight line missions a bit like doing a cross section of a country. You don't know exactly what you're going to come up against, but you feel like you're tackling the country, like you're almost fighting against it, but in a good way.
So, how are we getting on in terms of adhering to our straight line route? Well, mainly not too bad, keeping on line in open terrain as expected. However, our panicked dashes from field to field under the noses of several marauding farmers cost us in terms of accuracy, and there were at least 2 or 3 more instances where we passed outside the 25-metre platinum corridor. By the way, please ignore the other yellow dots that mainly run perpendicular to the line at random intervals. We'd used the GPS the previous day to navigate accurately to our stash points and leave supplies there to save way and pick up en route, but I didn't realise the GPS was actually tracking us at that point. Anyway, our biggest deviation brought us agonisingly close to the edge of the 50-metre gold corridor. We're not even sure what it was caused by, but most likely it was something to do with evading a farmer. 47.5 metres seems excessive though, so we were very lucky. Unfortunately, some of the video files on one of my SD cards were corrupted, so to fill you in, everything went relatively smoothly besides another pernicious woodland, this time littered with neck-high brambles that cost us many minutes, and a further near miss with a farmer, which resulted in this embarrassing backwards army crawl retreat. You would join us at around the 6-mile point.
Well, if that had been a minute later, it wouldn't have been good. I think you're alright now, Marcus. I'll yell at you if you need to get down again.
Okay.
Second time.
So annoying.
Don't think if anyone saw you.
No.
It's a pretty nasty hedge.
Just trying to get stuff to grab onto, man.
Okay, you're doing good.
I'd imagine Mr. Hedgy will be too pleased, but I'm trying not to trample his hedge.
Hey, nice one.
The next 2.5 miles then mainly consisted of open land dotted with farmhouses, none of which caused us too much trouble, and the odd sharp incline or steep decline. However, the main obstacles were patches of thick bracken which slowed our pace considerably. Although I was able to trample it down with big lanky strides, at 5'7", Ben was really finding it tough going, as much of the bracken was above his head height, and he was forced to fight tooth and nail to put one foot in front of the other. It was scant consolation that we were keeping a pretty good eye on the line at least. As we approached the 9-mile point at around 4 PM, you would think, wouldn't you, that this rather innocuous field would cause us absolutely no trouble whatsoever. You'd be wrong. As we galloped down the hill in the top right of frame towards the trees in the centre left of shot, we came across a stream, just too wide to jump across and slightly too deep to just walk across without taking precautionary measures. I went first and used the inventive rubble sack technique demonstrated tremendously here by Will Haig in the previous Scotland mission. Here is an animated reconstruction of what happened using the latest high-tech graphics. Ben filmed on my GoPro as I made it across without any calamity. I then attached the rubble sacks to my backpack to stop them blowing away and chucked the pack back across the river so that Ben could repeat the manoeuvre. The pack landed a few feet over the river, thank God, and Ben detached the rubble sacks ready to cross the river. It was at that moment that I made a fatal suggestion. "Why don't I film you?" I shouted to Ben, who was still holding the GoPro as he gave me a thumbs up. I then added, "Chuck it across, don't let it go in the river, make sure you overthrow it." Ben took my words literally, throwing the camera not only over the river but high over my head and beyond even my telescopic reach. 2 seconds later I heard a plop as the camera nestled somewhere in the muddy bog a few yards behind me. Realising what had happened, Ben then charged across the river in a desperate attempt to help me locate the GoPro before it began to sink. However, Ben had left my backpack and the rubble sacks loose on the opposite bank. It was barely 30 seconds later that we noticed the rubble sacks drifting downstream, taunting us as they meandered out of sight and far from our straight line route. Resigned to having cold, wet feet, we set about trying to find the GoPro. You would join us about 15 minutes later in an increasing state of panic.
Yeah, so we've just been crossing a river using the rubble sack technique that we perfected on the previous mission. And Ben filmed me, I got across, and then I offered to film Ben, and Ben unfortunately overthrew the camera and it went into this bog.
Indeed.
And we've been searching for it for a good 15 minutes and this is
Not good.
really bad.
Really bad.
Because now it's nearly dark.
Yeah,
We've
it's
still got
it's really dark.
4.5 kilometres still to go. And
there's quite a lot of footage on the GoPro. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was last replaced, probably a good 5k ago.
yeah,
It's not good. So we'll
yeah,
keep looking.
I don't know what to say really. It's just...
This footage, captured on Ben's phone as a temporary solution, showed how cheesed off I was that several months of planning and training seemed destined to go to waste because of one small miscommunication. What we really needed was help from our support guy Steve, but he wasn't due to arrive until the following afternoon. After a further 20 minutes or so scrabbling around in vain for the lost GoPro, we weighed up our options. With two of the trip's toughest hills coming up and our camping gear stashed at the top of one of them, our options were suddenly narrowing. One hill was vertiginous enough that tackling it in the dark was a risk we weren't prepared to take. After 8.85 miles or 14.25 kilometres, this happened.
The problem is, if we don't have a camera, then I can't document the mission. And at the moment it's 5 o'clock.
Getting dark.
We've got wet feet already.
Yeah.
Ben, how are you feeling at the minute?
Well, again, I think we're at about 15 kilometres, and we've got to get to about 18.5, 19. And there's some. I mean, we know from stashing yesterday that there's some pretty treacherous terrain. Especially the opposite side to where we went up last night. And again, considering it's dark, it's windy, it's getting really quite cold. I'm not even sure if you can hear what I'm saying because it's quite windy and there's the river. But I'm slightly worried now that it's this late and that one of us might slip or something, or maybe we wouldn't, because it's dark, we wouldn't see the cliff, the ledge. So I must say it's really not looking very good.
Yeah, I've been scrabbling around in this.
Yeah, we've been doing this for at least half an hour now. Yeah, it's not looking good.
No. Well, I might have to say the fateful words. But that wasn't the end of it. Having made this highly frustrating decision to stop, Ben and I decided it would be best to walk up to the nearest farmhouse and try to hitch a lift back to where my car was parked a few miles away opposite the Hand pub. But at what felt like the exact moment the words "mission abandoned" were uttered, a herd of cows, which up to that point had been contentedly chewing the cud in the corner of this field, decided now was a good time to wander over and start a staring contest at 10 paces with us. The stream was stopping them from encroaching further, but we suddenly realised my rucksack, left behind in panic on the opposite bank, had now been surrounded by these oblivious bovines. I'm not keen on cows at the best of times, and the thought of confronting them to rescue my bag was deeply unappealing, so we were stuck. With the mission having imploded in the space of less than an hour, we used our torchlights to attract the attention, ironically, of a nearby farmer. Fortuitously for us, he'd come to feed his cows and didn't mind giving us a lift back to the farmhouse in his trailer. Ben managed to get a few snippets of footage on his phone as this unfolded. The GoPro, however, remained unfound in the bog.
Cows got ourselves into a bit of a pickle, and we're hopefully going to be rescued by this farmer here. The whole day we've been trying to avoid farmers, and yet now one is coming to our rescue. Right, we just spoke to the farmer guy, and he's going to pick us up in his ATV from up here. We need to cross the river, and then hopefully his brother is going to give us a lift back to Marcus's car, because we really need it.
Yeah, I'll just chuck that to some cows and then...
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Well, you can't say it's not an adventure, Marcus. You can't say that. No. We're in the back of a cow trailer. Being towed down a park by a farmer.
Top seat my trip.
Yeah, so we're currently in the back of this ATV, and the farmer's feeding the cows in there, and then his brother is going to give us a lift back to Marcus's car.
Yeah, it's all very exciting. After making it back to the farmhouse, we bribed the farmer's older brother to ferry us back to the Hand pub. He wasted no time, hitting 70 mile an hour on narrow country lanes and narrowly avoiding killing one of his own sheep.
So, it really is one thing after another today. Basically, we got a lift back from a couple of farmers back to the village, where back to the Hand, where we've parked Marcus's car. And now it appears that Marcus's car key might be in my car, which is another 20 minutes down the road. So, to say we're screwed would be the understatement of the century.
I think this is fast turning into a disaster series, isn't it, really? I just can't believe what's been happening the last hour. We'll have to try and get to Ben's car, and I don't know. It's one of those things. I can't believe it. But for once, Linnea, the goddess of straight line missions, was smiling on us. It turned out I did have my car keys and my rucksack after all. found them. They're here in this car, in this bag. Oh dear.
We stopped off for some solemn fish and chips, but even that went wrong as they would only accept cash, we didn't have any, and the one local cash point was broken. As were we, and it was time to go home. Hi guys, just a quick encoder from me. That didn't quite go as planned, did it? To be honest, but that kind of happens fairly often on these missions. Never mind, but I'll be back fairly soon, hopefully in the spring, with a brand new mission, I hope, in Scotland, but we'll see how that goes. Now, please don't forget to comment on the videos if you've got any questions, because we're going to do a Q&A session with Ben and with Steve, hopefully soon. And I'm going to put your questions to them. So if you like, write something in the comments section and we'll try and answer it as best we can. In the meantime, see you soon.